What up? What up? What up? We're back with another episode of the Wolverine Live Recruiting Show. Shout out to everybody that is joining us tonight on this very fine Wednesday evening. Before we dive into today's show and get to your questions, remember this is the Wednesday show, which means I am answering all your questions in the content box. And it looks like we already have a comment from Indigo Ronan. Says on 3 content over 24/7 content. We certainly love that here on this show. On 3 just releases its new rankings. We actually talked about that yesterday alongside Zach Libby, who works with me at the Wolverine. So if you missed yesterday's show, the replay is available here on our YouTube channel. Make sure to like our channel, subscribe. It is completely free to subscribe to the YouTube channel. You get alerts every time a new video drops. So subscribe today. It is free, and like this video. It helps with the algorithm, helps us get in front of other Michigan fans so we can have more and more questions and more discussion. Also sign up for the Wolverine.com today. Get premium insider recruiting information, team information, basketball recruiting, NIL, transfer portal, and so much more. Plus, you get to be part of a great message board community over at thewolverine.com. Sign up today, $29.99 through August 31st. You see right there, sign up today. That's less than, a couple of months of like Apple TV and Netflix. So sign up today for the Wolverine.com for just $29.99 through August 31st. Yes, sir. Go blue, go blue. Glad to see the chat starting to fill in. But before we get to your questions, and we already do have some questions in the chat box, let's go ahead and bring you a message from our brand new sponsor, Vitamin Energy. You see the banner there on the bottom of the screen. Vitamin Energy is a powerful, naturally caffeinated energy shot that nourishes your body with vitamins, supports healthy weight loss, and boosts energy for 7+ hours with no jitters or sugar crash. I recently received my package of Vitamin Energy and was very pleased with it. Getting back into a workout routine, and Vitamin Energy definitely brings me that inspiration to get back into shape. Vitamin Energy is naturally caffeinated, gluten-free, has 0 sugars and artificial flavors, 0 carbs as well. There's something for everyone. There's a Sport Plus, there's a Focus Shot, there's a B12. No jitters, no crash. It supports gut health as well. It is energy with benefits. Check Vitamin Energy out at vitaminenergy.com and use Wolverine BOGO. You buy one, you get one free with code Wolverine BOGO at vitaminenergy.com. All right, guys, let's go ahead and dive into your questions this week. Let's go with Indigo Ronan, who says, how many commits could we get in March, and who do you think it could be? There are several candidates for commitments in March. The dead period is over, everyone. So March 1st marked the end of the winter dead period, and now we are heading towards spring. I guess the official spring date, as I was informed, is March 20th, according to the calendar. But in terms of the recruiting calendar, in terms of football, it's spring football time. It's March 1st. The dead period is over. Guys can get back on campus. Coaches have more leeway with contact rules. So the dead period has come to an end. And you are going to see several top Michigan targets make their way to Michigan throughout the month of March. I think the first guy we can definitely talk about as a commitment candidate is Aaron Childs, on 300 linebacker out of Only Good Counsel in the great state of Maryland. Childs named Michigan his leader after visiting in January. He is now set to return this month. I believe he tentatively was supposed to come in this weekend. I am going to follow up with Childs tonight and see if he's still locked and loaded for this weekend, or if he's coming in later in the month with teammate Darian Mayo. But either way, like I said, Childs named Michigan as leader in January. Of course, you had the linebacker coaching change with George Hilo no longer part of the program. You have Chris Partridge coming in. Childs was the first recruit that Partridge really reached out to once he arrived at Michigan, and there is familiarity there. Childs was recruited by Partridge at Ole Miss, a little bit on the lighter side since it didn't seem like Childs was overly interested in the Rebels, but I do think that Partridge is a high-end recruiter. He's very well known at Good Counsel. Like I said, familiarity already there with Childs from the past. I think Michigan checks all the boxes for Childs, both on and off the field. Plus, from a scheme standpoint, he's the perfect fit. I'd love to see him spend some time with Junior Colson. They are very, very similar players. During his return trip to Ann Arbor, I think the opportunity will be there for Michigan to close the deal. Childs did tell me that he'd like to make a decision soon, so we'll see if Michigan can seal it on the visit. Of course, we can't get through an episode of the Wolverine Live without bringing up Jaden Davis. Jaden Davis is expected to return to Michigan for another unofficial visit this month. No exact date set for Jaden at this time. However, he is fully expected back to check out a practice. Davis remains the guy on the quarterback board. I mean, it's still an all your eggs in one basket approach with Kirk Campbell, Michigan's new quarterbacks coach, monitoring a few others, having some baseline contact with guys like Michael Van Buren. But right now, the focus remains on Jaden Davis. Michigan's going to do everything it can to land Davis whenever he does make a visit this month. Kirk Campbell's going to spend extended time with him. Jim Harbaugh is going to answer any questions he and his family may have left. If Michigan is unable to close with Jaden Davis, I think it would be fair to say that they will expand the quarterback board, but that is definitely not the hope. The hope is that he'll shut it down and commit to the Wolverines and lead the class. So he is a commit candidate this month. But as we've seen from Davis in the past, he's pushed back timelines. Remember, he was originally set to commit in December. Then he thought about January, and obviously that never happened. So I do think Davis is a candidate for this month. And if he doesn't commit, it is time to recruit some other quarterbacks. And with Davis, obviously Providence Day has some other top targets. Jordan Shipp and Channing Goodwin, 3-star wide receivers, are both at the top of the board. Goodwin, a legacy recruit, loves Michigan. No true decision timeline for him, but I know Michigan would love to get him on board. They would love to get Shipp on board. No true decision timeline from him either. But with several guys coming in this month, I do think you could see a couple of dominoes fall for sure. Let's go ahead and go down to Crack the Nut, and he says, what 5 stars does Michigan have a legit chance at landing? Well, in this day and age, it's obviously tough to land 5 stars without a true NIL plan on the recruiting trail. So the hope is that Michigan will get that base salary model in play here at some point. The dead period's over. It would have been nice to have an announcement as we roll into March visits. We'll see if that happens soon or at any point. But right now, the guys that would come to mind are Dylan Stewart, the number 1 overall recruit in the country per On3. So Stewart did get bumped up all the way to number 1. As I first reported, Stewart is set to make a visit to Michigan on March 18th. This will be his second visit to Michigan. He was on campus last year for an unofficial visit as well. Everybody knows how much I love Dylan Stewart. I've been banging the Dylan Stewart drum since last year when I saw him at the Ray Lewis camp in Cleveland. He is absolutely phenomenal at everything. He's well filled out in both his upper and lower halves. He's lengthy. He's strong. He's athletic. He knows how to get after the quarterback. He's the number 1 recruit in the country for a reason, and he's at the very top of Michigan's wish list on the edge board. So, it's going to be a tough battle here. There are some NIL friendly schools involved, like South Carolina, which might actually have the lead in this recruitment. Alabama and Georgia are very involved as well. And obviously, anytime those two are involved, that is a scary situation. And Ohio State is another one high up on the list as well. But Michigan's recent edge production and what the Wolverines can offer on and off the field is certainly appealing to Stewart. I think he'll return for a third time for an official visit as well, but we'll see how it goes this month. Another 5-star Michigan is still in play with is Justin Scott. He is now the number 7 overall prospect in the country, I believe, per On3. Scott has long been Michigan's top priority along the defensive line. We're talking true defensive lineman. Scott is a guy that could be a mammoth at the nose at over 300 pounds, or be a 3 technique as well. He's moved so well for his size. He's extremely athletic for a 310 pounder. And as you see here, he is the number 7 overall recruit in the country with a 5-star ranking. Now, Scott hasn't been talked about in regards to Michigan from a national perspective for whatever reason, but our Zach Libby did go down to Chicago to watch him play basketball a couple of weeks ago, and Scott said that Michigan is still firmly in the mix and should receive an official visit. So Mike Elston and company are continuing to chip away here. Remember, Scott was set to make a decision earlier this year. He did not, and I think that helps the Wolverines as they continue to push for him. But Georgia's involved, Alabama's involved down in the South. Ohio State remains a big factor here as well. So we'll see how that one plays out. But those are the 2 5-stars that definitely come to mind right away. Let's go down to Noah Helderman, and he says, any update on a potential Jaden Davis visit to Michigan? So Channing Goodwin, Jordan Shipp, and Jaden Davis are all planning to visit Michigan, likely on the same day, but that is still being scheduled right now. And the most talented prospect at Providence Day, David Sanders, as I reported, is also looking to come in March. Let's go down to Benjamin Medema, who says, are we back in the hunt for Michael Van Buren? And that's why he's the thumbnail. So our producer Hutch picks the thumbnail, so you can thank him for all your thumbnails. But yeah, I mean, Kurt Campbell has reached out to Michael Van Buren. I had a great story with Van Buren a couple of weeks ago after I went out to Baltimore to see him. Campbell has circled back here. Like I said, Jaden Davis still remains the priority. It's still kind of an all your eggs in one basket approach. But I think Campbell is getting his ducks in a row in case Davis does not commit in March. Like I said, I think it's fair to say that Michigan will look at expanding the quarterback board if Davis goes uncommitted following another unofficial visit this month. And Van Buren's a guy that they are very familiar with. Van Buren visited last year. He had an early offer from Michigan. He's from Baltimore St. Francis, which of course produced Blake Corum and Derek Moore and Nakai Hill Green, and there's a long-standing relationship with St. Francis, so I definitely think that helps. Van Buren was very candid. I think he's a little disappointed that Michigan turned its attention to Jaden Davis following his visit last year, but he would definitely welcome back Michigan into his recruiting race. As I've stated before, I think Van Buren is a terrific talent. Yes, he is on the short side. He is prone to turning over the football, but this guy performs day in and day out, game in and game out, every time against the best competition nationally. I mean, St. Francis has a hellacious schedule. They travel across the country. They play the best, and Michael Van Buren always performs. And he led St. Francis to another terrific season. This year, he makes up for his height with his ability to make plays with his legs, as well as just his moxie and his attitude. Michael Van Buren definitely has that dog. I think he has a very high ceiling, but also a low floor, which makes him a bit of a scary prospect. On the flip side of the coin, you have Jaden Davis, who I think has less of a ceiling, but definitely a higher floor, a better baseline, a safer take at the quarterback position. But I would rank both around the same general vicinity. So yes, Kurt Campbell is back to tracking Van Buren and making contact there, but I still think we have to see what happens with Jaden Davis in March, or this month. It's already March. Let's go ahead and go down to William Cawthorn. Shout out to William Cawthorn. I believe he is a new YouTube user who is watching the show tonight. So welcome in. Should we really be excited about these verbal commitments if you can be flipped? Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a lot of verbal commitments to get excited about, guys that will likely stick. For example, Jacob Bowden is a verbal commitment. That guy bleeds maize and blue on 300 defensive back out of Harper Woods, Michigan. He is going to help lead the class. He's a legacy. His father, Rod, was a walk-on fullback for Michigan in the 90s. So Odin is definitely a guy that's going to be locked and loaded, leading the class, recruiting others. I saw Odin at a 7-on-7 tournament over the weekend, and he told me he's already working hard on fellow elite defensive backs like Aaron Scott and Bryce West and Boo Carter. He's working on his 7-on-7 teammate Jeremiah Beasley as well. So you definitely should be excited about Jacob Odin already being on board and leading the class. I think you should be excited about Mason Curtis as well, an on 300 linebacker out of Nashville, who was a bit of a surprise commitment last summer, but he's been very vocal in leading the class. Luke Hamilton, a 4-star offensive lineman, has been committed since last year and is very vocal in leading the class. So a lot of these guys are really solid to Michigan. Is there a chance that some of them could flip? Yeah, that's always going to be the case. This is recruiting, but I do think you should be excited about the guys that commit. I think you should be wary of guys that commit very early from out of region. Like in 2025, you have Chris Ewald, who's committed and has said all the right things, but is also making an offseason trip to Alabama. But that's the nature of the beast when you're a top 100 Southeast recruit. That's going to happen. But like I said, enjoy the ride, enjoy the guys that commit, and follow along the storylines. Let's go ahead and go down to KS, and he said, you had mentioned before that some things with KingJoseph had to be worked out in regards to his recruitment with Michigan. Can you give a general idea of what those issues are? Is it academic related? So I can't really comment on that right now. I will say that there is still interest on the side of KingJoseph. I actually had a chance to spend some time with him at Myrtle Beach a couple of weeks ago when he was there for an event. He was one of the biggest fallers in the on-3 rankings, dropping from number 66 to number 222 nationally. Look, I really like the talent. I think KingJoseph is a great athlete, a guy that, again, was there at a 7-on-7 tournament and really flashed as a tight end. The way he moves for his size, the speed he has, it's definitely impressive. I just think there are some things that have to be worked out in order for KingJoseph to really move up Michigan's edge board, but there's definitely interest on his side. He said he would like to make an OV to Michigan. So I think this is kind of just a wait and see situation. And we'll see if Michigan decides to make a push there or not. Let's go ahead and go back down to William Cawthorn, who says, what makes a person the number one overall prospect? Who's to say someone in California is better than someone in Chicago? So, in terms of Dylan Stewart, what makes him the number one overall prospect? Like I said, he checks all the boxes for me. When I went up, I guess, to Washington, D.C. to see him play this fall against Nicholas Harbor, who was a 5-star last cycle, it was very clear that Dylan Stewart was the best player on the field. And it wasn't even close. Like, Dylan Stewart was a better player than Nicholas Harbor by a wide margin. When we're talking about Dylan Stewart, like I said, we're talking about a guy that isn't just your lanky, typical edge rusher that is long but needs to add weight. I mean, this guy's already filled out. He's ready to go day one. Anybody can develop in the strength and conditioning program, but Dylan Stewart looks like that guy. When you see him in person, you're like, man, this guy is so filled out in both his upper and lower halves. He is a legit 6'5", 235 pounds. So first of all, frame and length stands out about Dylan Stewart, but just watching him move around. I mean, this is a guy that has elite pass rushing moves. He uses his hands extremely well. He plays with violent hands off the edge. He's extremely athletic. He's quick. He's fast. He knows how to just put offensive linemen in spin cycles basically and get after the quarterback. He absolutely wrecks havoc off the edge. But on top of just being a pure pass rusher, he sets the edge. He plays the run extremely well, which I thought was really impressive when I saw him live. Also, when I saw him live, the opposing team basically started running away from him. And so Friendship adjusted and put Stewart at Mike linebacker, and he was absolutely dominant there. On top of all of that, he's also very comfortable in pass coverage. I mentioned I saw him at the Ray Lewis camp last year, which is mostly for, straight up linebackers. Stewart played some linebacker there, and I thought he was one of the better guys in pass coverage. So when you look at everything Stewart has to offer, that makes him the number one guy in the country. So I know you see the rankings here, and he's not the consensus number one guy in the country, but I love the On3 ranking there for Dylan Stewart. He was arguably the most impressive prospect I saw on the defensive side of the football last year for sure. So, that's what I can say about my eval of Dylan Stewart and why I would definitely make him a 5-star. In terms of who's to say someone in California is better than someone in Chicago, I mean, I think it's a case by case basis, in regards to states. You can't just make the generalization that that some just because someone's from Texas, they're going to be better than someone from the Midwest. Being a guy that is from Texas, I know there's some bias for the South and for Texas. I mean, Texas is a great football playing state, obviously, arguably has the best high school football in the country. But I think it's just case by case basis is what I would say. I mean, I don't think you can just make a general assumption that just because someone is from Texas, they're going to be great, or someone's from the Midwest, they're not going to be as great. I mean, the South definitely has an advantage in terms of, linemen. I think you can find a lot of great defensive and offensive linemen down south. But again, it's a case by case basis. I mean, Chicago has Justin Scott, who's arguably the best defensive lineman in the country. So, hopefully that answers your question. Let's go down to Eddie Rogers, and he says, how are Keon Saab and Zeke Berry? I haven't heard anything about their progress. Are they safeties or corners? So as recruits, Keon Saab was definitely a bigger safety. Zeke Berry was a guy that I thought could play multiple roles in the secondary. Zeke had some injury issues that plagued him as a senior. I actually went out to see him play twice, and the first time I saw him play, he had an injury and he was kind of nicked up for a large part of the year. And I heard he did have some injury issues as a true freshman at Michigan. So with Barry, I think the talent is there for sure. It's all about staying healthy. With Keon, I think it's just about getting comfortable with his body. Like I said, he was a bigger safety. We didn't really know if they were going to add some weight and maybe spin him down to linebacker or keep him light. These guys, are just coming off their freshman years at Michigan. I think they'll make some noise next year. I don't cover the team. I only do recruiting. But I know that Michigan was very excited about them. I know covering them, they were both extremely talented prospects. So I think you'll see them start to make an impact maybe this year. Let's go ahead and go down to Newber. And he says, any sleepers on the board that you think could make a big impact despite their ranking? I mean, the guys that I mentioned at the top of the show, the 3-star receivers, Channing Goodwin and Jordan Shipp, I mean, I just saw them in Myrtle Beach a couple of weeks ago, and both of them had terrific tournaments, especially Jordan Shipp, man. I was really hoping he'd get a 4-star ranking in this update. He did not, which was disappointing. When you talk about a guy who's 6'2", 185 pounds, really strong hands, perhaps the strongest hands out of any prospect on Michigan's wide receiver board. It looks like he is a 4-star on the industry ranking. Look at that. Jordan Shipp got his 4-star back. I'm excited. It looks like On3 gave him a minor bump. He is still a 3-star on 3, but it was just enough to get him to the industry 4-star. So shout out to Jordan Shipp for getting that ranking. But yeah, I thought he was the best player at the tournament, and that included 5-star defensive back KJ Bolden. Now I think Bolden, you could see, was a better recruit based on, the athletic movements and things of that nature. But Jordan Shipp was the most productive player there by a wide margin. Like I said, really strong hands. He's coming along as a route runner, terrific catch radius, uses his physicality to his advantage, is fast enough to take the top off of defense, and just a great kid, fits the Michigan mold. He was a team captain as a junior at Providence Day, which is a big deal at that type of school to be an underclassman team captain. So I think Jordan Shipp checks a lot of boxes. And Channing Goodwin, fellow 3-star wide receiver out of Providence Day, he's not going to wow you with his size. He's not super explosive. He's not super fast, but he's just consistently open. He's an elite level route runner. He moves the chains. If it's third down, I want Channing Goodwin catching the football. He's deceptively athletic, I would say. He's a guy that's also a star on his baseball team. He plays both ways at Providence Day, which, like I mentioned, is a premier program, state title winners down in North Carolina, and Goodwin also starts at safety there. So I believe both Channing Goodwin and Jordan Shipp are 3-star guys that could definitely make an impact. Both of them come to mind right away when thinking about, more underrated recruits. Look at that. Look, it looks like Channing Goodwin also got a 4-star on the industry ranking. On3 gave him a 3-star. Remember, On3, just side note here, On3 updated its rankings, but it also updated this. I guess you can't see my cursor circling it, but the industry ranking, you notice, is no longer the consensus ranking. Oh, there we go. Thank you to our producer Hutch for doing that. There's no longer the consensus ranking. On3 is no longer weighing all 4 of these recruiting sites equally. They are giving more weight towards On3 and 24/7. So with 24/7 having Channing as a top 100 player nationally, he was able to bump up to a 4-star here on the industry ranking. So a change from On3 on how the rankings are calculated from all 4 sites. So again, On3 has its own ranking and also has an industry ranking, which takes an average of the 4 sites, but gears more towards On3 and 24/7. Let's go ahead and go down to Crack the Nut. And he says, why is the base plan not in place? So I'm assuming this means to the base salary model that we've talked about for NIL. I mean, I don't get paid to answer that question. That's for the boosters and Michigan and all those guys to work out. I mean, it's supposed to have happened already. It's disappointing that it hasn't, and I'm not exactly sure what the holdup is. I can't tell you that it's probably not Santa Ono. I mean, he's been a guy that's been very proactive since taking over as president, and I can tell you it's probably not Jim Harbaugh, since he's the guy that's been pushing for this. So, yeah. Anyway, let's go down to KS. He says, who is Jay Harbaugh recruiting this cycle? He's been a good recruiter, but seems like I haven't heard his name in a while. I mean, Jace kind of stays low key, man, but he's such a great evaluator of talent. I mean, he finds guys like Colston Loveland out in the middle of nowhere. So I think Jay does his thing, man. He just doesn't get the media pub, but he's a great recruiter, a great evaluator. Look, Michigan needs to land a high-end safety this cycle after not taking a true safety last cycle. So he's in it with several guys there. I mean, some safeties that come, top of mind. Ricardo Jones down in Georgia is an on 300 prospect that I really like. He's visited Michigan in the past. Josiah Brown out of Long Island, New York, is a newer target that Jay Harbaugh is really interested in. And I think you'll see him visit. Jalen McClain out of New Jersey is another on 300 prospect that's visited Michigan in the past that Jay is targeting at safety. So I think there are just a lot of safety names. It's just about getting them on campus. And I think the other thing with safeties is there's a lot of out of region guys that Michigan fans might not be super familiar with. So I think you'll get more familiar with the guys Jay is recruiting as they get on campus. But the big time guy that Jay is in on that I know a lot of people are excited about here is Gatlin Bear out of the great state of Ohio. Like I said, just produced, or not Ohio, Idaho, that just produced Colston Loveland. Obviously, Gatlin Bear is one of the fastest recruits in the country. I believe he runs, somewhere in the 10 fours in the or low 10 fours in the 100 meter. Gatlin Bear is one of my favorite wide receiver targets on the board. I mean, that speed is absolutely unreal on the outside with Jay Harbaugh landing Colston out of Idaho. I think that he's built that connection there. He's very well respected in the state of Idaho. Plus, Gatlin Bears high school coach now is actually Colston Loveland's old high school head coach. So even more of a connection there. I think you'll see Gatlin make a visit at some point this offseason. But as you can see, On3 has him rated as a top 150 recruit nationally, the number 109 overall recruit nationally. I really like that ranking. I think Bear is going to be a terrific player at the next level. The only downside with Gatlin is that I believe he is planning to take a 2-year mission like Andrew Gentry did. And I'm sure Gentry will be a good selling point for Gatlin, but that means he's technically like a 2026 recruit since he'll embark on that mission immediately upon graduation. All right, let's go down to, it looks like we've hit the half-hour mark, so we're going to speed through these next questions. If you want to jump the line and get your question answered for sure, then hit the donate button, leave a super chat. That goes directly to my travel budget and definitely helps me out. Any update on Brandon Davis Swain? I would expect him to visit sometime this offseason, but he's a guy they're continuing to evaluate. He was one of the biggest fallers in the On3 rankings, dropping down out of the On 300 to a 3-star. So Michigan's still evaluating there. Let's go down to Kenmai. He says, I feel like we have a good shot at Elijah Rushing and Bryce West more than most people think. Do you agree? I think Bryce West is definitely one to watch. I think it's Michigan or Ohio State. Steve Klingscale has done as great of a job as you can. I'm just, wary that the Ohio State connections will be a little too much to overcome. Elijah Rushing, I mean, Michigan has to get him on campus. I do think that Michigan is in play there. He's been wanting to visit Michigan for a while. Mike Elston offered him way back when he was at Notre Dame, but you have to get Elijah Rushing on campus to have a shot. I mean, for those of you that don't know, Elijah Rushing is the number 4 edge in the country, the number 28 overall recruit nationally, a 5-star when it comes to the industry ranking. So yes, I still think Michigan's in that top group. I think they're in consideration for a visit, but there is still a lot of work to do. William Cawthorn says, as long as Harbaugh is the coach, do you think we'll ever get elite receivers like the Suckeyes? Yeah, Michigan, really shows its willingness to pass and let JJ continue to open up the offense. You saw some of that in the college football playoff as it kind of turned into a shootout there. Then, yeah, I think more receivers will want to join Michigan. But I think the pass-happy offense that Ohio State has and their receiver production, over the last several years, obviously helps them get big-time talent at the position. But I know receivers just want to see Michigan open up the offense a little bit more. Let's go ahead and go down to Jimmy Whitner. He says, EJ, will we take 1 or 2 running backs this cycle? And if you were choosing, who would we take? 2 running backs this cycle. I mean, the dream combination is Jordan Marshall or Taylor Tatum. Realistically, I think you can definitely get one of the two. I think Jordan Marshall is probably a little bit more realistic since he is in the region as a Midwest guy. And as far as a running back too, I like the 2 guys out of the DMV. Dylan Jones at Good Counsel isn't a guy that has been talked about much, but he's one of my favorite running backs on the board. And DeJuan Williams out of St. Francis, obviously with Michigan having success at St. Francis with Blake Corum. DeJuan Williams is definitely a name to know, and Williams did make a visit to Michigan last month. All right, guys, I think that pretty much does it for our recruiting show tonight. Just quick, very important programming note. There will be no show next week on Tuesday or Wednesday because I am going on vacation. My wife is demanding a peaceful vacation on the beach, so we are going to Turks and Caicos. Normally, we would go somewhere adventurous, but guess I will have to survive the beach. So I will see you guys 2 weeks from now, I guess, March 15th. We will be back for another live show. In the meantime, subscribe to thewolverine.com for all your latest recruiting information. Just $29.99 through August 31st. Also, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And like I said at the top of the show, give our new sponsor, Vitamin Energy, a try by using the code Wolverine BOGO. All right, guys, have a great rest of the night and go blue.